1 o'clock, so let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining us for the Onboarding How to Hire for Retention webinar. We have Amy, who is our training director with us, and also Derek, who is our director of operations. If you guys want to say hi.
Hello there. Welcome, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
So you may wonder, and this was brought up in the marketing too, is how do we maintain less than 25% retention in or turnover in an industry with 100 and 150%? So how do we keep our turnover numbers so low in this industry? And that's really what we're going to talk about today. And we do that by carefully selecting our team through a process for interviewing and hiring. And it all really starts with who we hire. And Amy is going to share a little bit about who it is exactly we're looking for in our team.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. I think something that we've learned in our time is these two elements are so important to us, and I think to everyone, to hire to criteria. We've established two specific criteria that we hire to that I believe a lot of people out there are looking for as well, just possibly haven't named it. So our two hiring criteria are we're looking for someone who is a performance match, someone whose version of excellence is the same as ours, and then someone whose sense of values is also a match, or their purpose and their values. So I think hiring to both of those is where a lot of people miss, and where I know I've missed in my years prior to Nick's. And we can easily get caught up in an interview with liking someone or really appreciating what they're saying and feeling like, maybe their sense of culture is great and they're a fit, and then all of a sudden they get out there and, in the field and whatever we've hired them to do, and they move at a turtle's pace, or, their performance is not at all what we need it to be. So, and really having one without the other is just not a fit with our type of culture. One thing that we do, and we'll talk more about this, is just really, I recommend to anyone that you imagine your best, your highest performer. And when you're interviewing, imagine that person sitting there, and hire only someone of equal or greater value, someone that's as valuable as that person. We want to make sure that we're hiring in a way that we're raising the performance of our team, not just hiring people who just make the cut or are just under the cut. We want to make our culture and our environment moving forward at all times. And so just hiring that player that's just even more A+ than the last one we hired, or than the people on our team, just really keeps us in a forward motion. So training is definitely a big part of how we continue this theme, and there's a lot of different ways that you can measure both performance and culture, and we're gonna go through some of the different ways that you can measure these things actually with a tangible measurement. So yeah, I think that's a good summary. So
Great, thank you. And that's a little bit about what our criteria is, and what's important to mention as well is, what are these applicants seeking? What are these people, these high performers, wanting out of a job? Because that's an important thing to know about your applicants as well. So an Inc. article actually summarized it well, and they put 10 things that employees are looking in order to be happy and to stay where they're at. And so we'll just go through a couple of them: goals, responsibilities, autonomy, flexibility, and these are in the order that Inc. put them in. Opportunities for innovation, open-mindedness, transparency, and compensation. Well, but number one was purpose. So they're looking for a place that has purpose, a place that they can give back. And even more now with the millennial generation, the more and more that we're finding out about them, they are looking for a way to give back. They want to make an impact on something bigger than themselves. So this is our really opportunity as businesses to create these places for them. How do we show our applicants that they can make purpose by working for our businesses instead of going down the street and going to some regular other place? So it's important to really know. And what's interesting as well about this article is that compensation was the last thing. It's, it's still in there. It's still one of the top 10 things, but it's dead last. So that's something to pay attention to as well, that, if you find these right applicants that are all about giving back and, want to make an impact somewhere, you may be able to bring that in a little bit less than someone who is just looking for the money. So something just to talk about, Derek, we'd like to hear, have you ever experienced a team member leave in search of something else and come back?
Yes, we've had several instances of that, that I can easily recall, and they fall into a couple different categories. We just had a team member come back to our Crystal Lake location, and he had spent years working for us and had risen pretty high in our company. And he went off and he got a full-time job, in the sort of with the career that he was looking for. And it took him 2 or 3 or 4 months to get used to that. And now that he's assimilated in his new job, he's coming back for two nights a week. Not so much for the money, really, but because he misses, because of the team and the purpose, and and really the joy that he experiences at work. And then also, a different example from another category is a server that we had that. She had a friend who worked in another restaurant. It was this great bar. They do a lot of business at night, and they make tons of money on the weekend. And so she was kind of, she was tempted over there, really for the compensation. And then once she got there, and she only spent maybe a month and a half working for them, and she wasn't getting, the first, the top 9 things on this this list from Inc. She wasn't getting the flexibility. She wasn't getting the open-mindedness. She wasn't being developed. There were no goals, and she came back because financially it was rewarding, but it wasn't worth all the sacrifices she had to make to work there.
Great, thank you for sharing those. And I mean, that's just 2 examples. I mean, I'm sure we have many more that we can share throughout the years, right?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot. I mean, yeah, I could keep going but I know we're on a time limit here.
Definitely. So how does it all start? How do we tell our team that we are different? And the way that we do it and that we found success is through our cover sheet of our application. So we actually, before anyone fills out an application, we tell them to read over this cover page. And the specific words that we use are: take a minute to read the cover page. These are our company's purpose and values, and we take them very seriously. If this sounds like a place you'd like to work, then complete the second page and let us know when you're finished. And those specific words are actually in our training too, because it is so crucial that every applicant that we have understands that these purpose and values are not something that's just sitting on our wall, but that's something in our culture that's thriving and that we talk about and that is in action. So we really want to make it a point for each new applicant to know that we're serious about these. And for that person that's just looking for a job, it's not going to be the place for them. And it actually says that on the bottom, which some people actually get offended by, but that's how we feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kelsey, I'd like to add to that. I mean, this is when applicants receive this application, they're already, this is already part of the interview process. And, like when I receive an application and they can't recall any of the values, even though they've been asked to read it, well, there you go. There is a data point right away. Either the values hit home with them, and they can recall some of them, or they say, "Oh, I just kind of skimmed it." Well, okay.
Yeah, definitely. That brings us right into the next step in our interview process. After they fill out the application, then we actually have them, a manager or someone that's trained in our interview process, come up and talk to them. Amy, what are some things that we ask them? Derek was kind of alluding to it already, but how do we track, that they read that cover sheet or not?
Yeah, well, so the whole process of the application is, as you both said, the beginning of an interview, and we've already got, just in 2 minutes, we've got opportunities to determine whether this person is worthy of even an interview. Starting with the question about the values, we specifically state that we'd like them to read it, and now after doing that, one of the first questions we'll say is, what stood out to you about the cover page? And to Derek's point, we get some data right there about whether they followed a direction. It's not the only question we ask, and it's the first question we ask for sure, because we know we're recommending and urging them to read it first. So that helps us track how they follow direction, and then their integrity around what they're actually reading. And, if they say they read through it, then can they actually name what stands out? Some of the other things that we track in this interaction are body language. And, we've got the C-score here. So smile, eye contact, attitude, and aptitude. And all of these elements for us are critical pieces to the person that we're hiring for our industry and our company. This will help us determine whether they have potential to be a performance match, potential to be a values match based on these things. We rate each of these elements, smile, eye contact, attitude, and aptitude. We rate we give a point for each. And then, if they rate a certain amount, like a 75% or more, then they're worthy of signing up an interview. We've got interest in them. But if we're looking for a host, or someone's applying for, let's just say, a host position, and a smile's not there, that's not going to take us very long to determine that this person is not, a good candidate for a host. Another thing that has always felt good to me is the fact that we talk to every applicant, and that in and of itself is uncommon. And it takes a lot of people by surprise. There are people who are just dropping in on their way home from the gym or wherever they might be coming from, and here, they're just here to fill out an application, and only to find that they're going to have a conversation with a manager. And to us, that's, not really a big deal, but to others, they're feeling like this is an interview. So just paying attention to, giving the fact that we talk to every applicant, the due diligence is an important part, and really making sure that we're following the process so that we don't find ourselves in that first interview going, oh my gosh, how did this person get signed up for an interview? They're not holding any of these elements of our C-score. They don't seem to be a values match or performance match. And, that's not something that we want to waste our time on by no means, nor their time for that matter. So another question that we'll ask is, why this industry? And, if their answer is a shoulder shrug and my parents told me to, then that's a good data point. It doesn't mean that they're not a fit, and it gives us a sense of what's driving them, or who's driving them for that matter. So we do hire a lot of 16-year-olds that are coming in for their first job, and they're a great part of our culture. So it's not something that we look away from. It just kind of reframes how we track. They don't have any experience, so we can't speak to their previous jobs. We just speak to their life experience, and it's a different set of questions for us. So what I love about this C-score, the weeding out process, is that anyone can implement that. Whatever your rating score might be, or whatever your points might be that you track to determine someone is it fit for you or not? It's something that anyone can implement, and it gives you an opportunity to see a person versus see their application and go through a stack of applications going, I wonder if this person is a good fit for us or not. So.
Great point. Putting a face to the name,
Mm-hmm. Okay, sorry, so I continue here. So after we finish talking with them, if we decide that they are going to go ahead and sign up for an interview, then we bring them right over to our interview logbook, and we've got interviews slotted every week. It's something that we've been disciplined about, something that you need to be disciplined about and make time for in your companies to really give yourselves and potential hires the proper opportunity to be a fit for your company. So we plan on 2 days a week, usually 1 day for first interviews, 1 day for second interviews. We've got usually an hour and a half to 2 hour time slot where we can fit 3-4 interviews in. And some weeks those pages are full and some weeks they're empty, and it's just something that we can plan for. So if we decided that this applicant is going to sign up for an interview, we bring them to the book, and we've got a couple sets of dates where they can choose their time slot. And this is an important part of setting the expectation for accountability, where we ask them to choose their time. And we don't say, how does this time work for you? We give them, different days, different options, different times, and let them choose. And that way, come the day of the interview, if someone shows up late, they're showing up late for a date and time that they chose. And that just tells us that, might give us another data point about how they manage their time and how, effective they are with their own accountability and tracking, the things that are going on in their lives. So. Did I say it all there, Kels?
Yes, thank you. I think the thing that supports us the most is having these binders and having everything set up, the whole process. So this is something that anyone can do.
Yeah, so this will lead us into just a kind of an outline of what happens after signing up for an interview. We in our company do a 2-interview process. We've got a first interview and a second interview. We've always got 2 interviewers and then the 1 interviewee. There's a couple different reasons for 2. We've got 2 different perspectives, obviously, and provides us with 2 different opinions. And this provides a little bit more range in what we're tracking in an individual. We will always start our interview with an activity. And this is another thing that any one of you can do right away. You can create an activity for someone to do and make sure it's an activity that will give you a gauge in some way of their performance. So whatever industries you're in or whatever roles or jobs your future employees will be doing for you, you want to give them a task that will tell you whether they move fast or whether they can actually slow down or, how quick they are with their hands. So you give them an activity. For us, it's a walk through the restaurant, and then we actually rate their pace. And we ask them to rate their pace. And if our rating of their pace and theirs is the same, then we know that we've got a potential performance match. So their version of a fast pace and ours is the same. So there's just one data point to support us with determining if someone is a fit. We also send them looking for 3 things in the restaurant that they would improve. And if they come back and say, I could only find 1, then there's an opportunity. So it's a sense of following directions. A lot of people think it's about the 3 things that they come back for, right, Derek? How many people are like, is it okay if I say this, And really part of the activity is to just find 3 things. With very little limitation as to what those 3 things would be. And people who come back and say, I couldn't really find anything, it's just kind of a limitation on their perspective and another data point. So
we keep talking about these data points. So where do we bring up what we're tracking and how? To Derek or to you, Amy?
Can you say that again, Kelsey?
Oh, I said we keep talking about these data points, what we're tracking from them signing up, what we're tracking from their 2-minute conversation, and then again in this activity. So what do we do with these data points and where?
Yeah, so part of the process is to the intention behind our process is to get to the core of a person and find out if they're a match, if they're a culture match, if they're a performance match. So every time we get a hit of a yes, this person is a fit here, we keep digging and we try to track, where else they might be a yes or where they might be a no. How we ask questions and how we track body language and how we send messages in our own body language are all important parts of being an effective interviewer. It's real easy to get caught up in body language and, the person on the other end of an interview is often nervous. I wouldn't say all the time, but a lot of times there's some level of nervousness. So all it takes is a little nod of our head to put someone at ease, and then they go, oh, phew, I'm doing a good job. And it's not about doing a good job. It's about really getting a sense of who the person is we're interviewing. So we really, really work hard at keeping our body language neutral and, making sure that we're not reinforcing anything that they're saying. We're just keeping neutral body language. We're not leaning in too much. We're not smiling or nodding our heads and, saying, yeah, say more of that. We don't want to lead them into that. We want to make sure that we're asking an open-ended question, not a yes or no, and really getting to the core of who someone is.
Mm-hmm.
Derek, how hard was that for you to learn that, we have people on this webinar that are new maybe to this process or they might not even know that their own body language plays into the applicant. So speak to that a little bit from your experience with restaurants in the past. How was that different?
Well, I mean, from my experience, and I've probably hired, 1,000 people before I got to Nick's, and so for me it was a real eye opener because I had treated most interviews as a conversation, and and I was, especially with like the manager level types, I was laughing and joking, having fun, and getting to know the person, and so giving off all sorts of of indications as to what would make me happy or what didn't. And as soon as I went through the training at Nick's, it wasn't too hard to adopt because it felt so right right away, and it felt so intuitively natural to return to neutral and to stop feeding the interviewer. So it was I just had it takes a session or two to wrap my mind around it, and then it really felt very natural. And now so the funny thing is I get all these interviewees, and after they're hired, they come back to me and they say, man, you were like Stonewall Jackson. I could not tell. I didn't think you could tell what you were thinking. And I'm like, thank you for the feedback. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Little do they know, right? Well, great. And that brings me to the point too that having a process is really crucial. What we've found by having this process is that it's kind of hard to get a job at Nick's. We've had some people that they interviewed twice or 3 times before they got hired. They come back and something's changed and that's how they get in. But it's really important for our retention that our interview tactics stay strong, that we have this process and we stick to it, because that's really how we safeguard our culture against people that aren't going to be high performers. And that's kind of where, if you don't have a process and, the interviews maybe like Derek just shared, where it's not as structured, then it's going to be a revolving door of people, and you're never going to build that retention that you need to drive the company to the next level. So.
Yeah, Kelsey, I'm just going to say one more thing real quick before we move on. And something that supports preventing that revolving door type of culture or supports high retention is the planned interviewing every week. If we go back to that and we only hire high performers, then we find ourselves just hiring great people versus hiring when we have a hole to fill. And that's often the situation that we're in, where we're hiring this server because they are so outstanding. If we don't, they'll be down the street in our competition, and we want to hire them. We want them to be part of our culture. And I think that mentality keeps you from hiring for a pulse and filling a hole, and really supports you to just hire great people. And it's funny because sometimes we'll hire a server and other servers will be like, what hours are you giving them? And maybe at first, we only have 1 or 2 shifts a week. And then all of a sudden someone's, spouse's schedule changes and they can't work Tuesdays and Thursdays anymore. And poof, there's an open door for someone to have more shifts. So it's really amazing the way things have a way of just working out that way when they're supposed to. And then you're not just hiring people, adequate or average or less than average people, because you need it. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good point. So you'd think with the process that we have, it's 2 interviews and then there's a decision. So we don't leave the process with when they get hired. We want, at Nix, we want them to feel, each team member that we bring on, we want them to feel accepted, supported, and successful. So right away, when we make that decision about they're a yes or they're a no, we take action. When they're a yes, we call them and offer them the job, and then we tell them when orientation is going to be. And we have a 2-day orientation process, and included in that is all of the things that we're going to share with them to make them feel accepted, supported, successful. So Amy, could you share a little bit about how orientation is structured to do that for our new team?
Yeah, so like Kelsey said, we've got a 2-day orientation process. It's about maybe 5 hours each day. And that in itself surprises people, I think, in our industry, as does our hiring process. So at least we're consistent in how we surprise people. So what we spend most of our orientation time on is our cultural pieces. We make sure the team understands that we are a purpose and values-driven company, and what that actually means, and how that may or may not be different than either the place they were before or different than the culture of the school that they're in. A lot of, schools are teacher-based and, we'll tell you what to do and when to do it. Otherwise, don't do anything outside of that. We spend 2 days making sure that our team members know why we take the time to do 2 interviews and what we're looking for and why we trust that they can make decisions. So, really orienting them around our culture and inviting them to step into it as quickly as possible. And then for some, for the 16-year-olds, they're like, I'm on it. I'm so excited to be able to make my own decisions. And for old people like me and Derek, it might take some time because, if they came from a culture different than Nix, where you called the owner or the corporate, president or whatever it might be before you make decisions, then it might take some time to adjust to that type of culture. We have a handbook. It's pretty small, and it's got everything you need to know. And we don't really go through it. We just give it to them and say, trust, read this, make sure you understand it, ask the questions that you have, and we go from there. So really setting them up with knowing what's around the corner, knowing what our training design is another way that we let them know right away what's ahead and how we make them feel accepted. I'm going to go through all three, Kels, right? Accepted, supported, successful?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's the accepted piece, so letting them know, welcome to the team, here are the tools that we're going to give you. And then the supported piece of what we do with our new team members is actually providing training. We've got anywhere from 6 to 11, 12 training shifts that we allow for different positions in our company to train in. And we've got, a manual, and we've got trainers that work side by side with our team members to go through this process. And then a clearly defined system that tells them when they're finished training. So right out of the gate, they know that, hey, you may have never made a pizza before in your life, and we feel that you've got it in you. We feel that you're a performance match and a values match. So we know you can do it. Here are the tools, go. And we let them know what the plan is to do that. So that's the supported piece. So letting our team know they're going to have everything they need to do the position that we've hired them to do. And I think that feels really good. A lot of times we get feedback from people that we've hired that have come from other businesses or other companies that say, wow, I'm just used to a 1 or 2 day pep talk and a slap on the back and a go get 'em tiger. And, and then the restaurant industry is scratching their head going, why can't we hang on to people? So really giving people the tools they need to do their job is critical to making them feel supported. And then the last piece, the successful piece, is how do you know when you've done a good job? And training at NICS is so clearly defined that when you're done, there's a clear system to say you are certified, you are finished with your training. There's a couple different ways that we celebrate someone that's finished with training. We've got a kind of a parade where we walk them through the restaurant, in that time, and make sure everybody that's on the team that's there at that time knows that this person's certified and they're finished with their training, and we give them a little celebration. And, we've got a place on the wall where their name goes, and a lot of different pieces that say, okay, you're done with your training, job well done, you've done everything that we've, asked you to do, and here's why. It's actual metrics that say they're done. So I think they're pretty simple conceptually, and it's not extremely common to have all three pieces outlined that way. So it's a huge part of our retention and why people stay, because they've got these key elements to keep them successful. So.
And even after that, Derek, could you speak to a little bit about how we say every day is an interview and how that plays out?
Yeah, I mean, really every day, I think almost in any job, every day is an interview, and it's a question of whether or not we're conscious of that. In our company, we encourage the team to work on and develop their own performance, and also to provide their team members with the feedback they need to continue to grow in their skills and in their in their behaviors. So every day is an interview, in the sense that we're always looking for something. We're looking for something that's going well, and we're always looking for something that we can improve upon. And and of course, if there's ever a situation where we see an action or behavior and we say, wow, I wouldn't hire this behavior. Well, if we wouldn't hire it, then we certainly can't tolerate it. And so that's where we make sure that we're engaged in the coaching process and providing the team member the tools, and the feedback necessary to shift that behavior. And if it can't be shifted, then it's probably not the best place for that person.
Yeah, that's such a great, clear question, Derek. Is this a behavior that we would hire? Because I think, it's easy for organizations that have been around for a long time to get caught up in that person has been here for 10 years. And for some reason that gives someone an excuse to not grow with the company. And that's, that shouldn't be the case. as long as your organization is a learning organization the way ours is, then we need to continue to ask ourselves that question and make sure that our team is asking that question, So that's a question, a challenge that I've heard in different courses and speaking events that we've had, where what do you do with the person that's been there for 20 or 30 years? It's like, managers just give up and go, there's nothing you can do about that. And, I feel that we do, right, Derek? We've got, some veteran servers and team members. We don't let them off the hook if something's not going right.
No.
Right. It is a challenge, and it's a challenge that has to be embraced. The person who's been here for 20 or 30 years probably has some attributes or has some skills that really make them worthwhile and valuable. So it's never it's never an easy situation, and that's no excuse, for encouraging really or putting something, putting up with something that doesn't work. And then what I know that you've mentioned many times is, what's what kind of message is that team member sending to the new team members? What kind of impact is that having on the company culture? And really, so if the message is, well, I've been here for longer than you are, and so I can do this and you can't, that's not the kind of message I think any company would want to consciously encourage. And it's one of those unconscious, things that it, like you said, it helps to name it, to gain clarity, so that we all understand, what standards or, what system we're using.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up our points a little bit, which of the, pre-screening and then the 2 interviews, which do you think would be easiest for these business owners that we have on the webinar with us to implement right away?
I think for entry level employees, especially, the pre-screening is easy to implement and super important.
Yeah, I would agree.
Great.
And in my experience too, it's a step that people often are not doing, because a lot of times I think people were hired, the hiring is to replace someone who's leaving. And, every industry is going to be different, and how many you hire and how often you can do that. And I think with that higher performing person in mind always, I think it's a good frame to step into a screening process with. So.
And something to share too with our leadership team and hiring them. We don't have them come into the restaurant like our entry level positions, but we do a pre-screen phone call, or I do Skype interviews as well. So that's something that may be a good tip for these business owners that you may not find, you may not be in the establishment 24 hours a day, able to meet with everyone when they come in. So while you're going through applications or resumes that you get through email, that might be a good, come up with 5 questions that you think would really tell you about the person. Could be, what do you do in your free time? When's the last time you accomplished a goal? How did you do that? Something along those lines that would really give you a feel for this type of person over the phone. And then that could determine whether or not to bring them in for an interview. That might support you with weeding out some of those applicants as well.
Right. That's a good point.
So then let's open the floor for some questions and answers to either Amy, Derek, or I. Believe we can do them in here if you go to the Q&A section, or if you want to use the chat as well.
Okay.
So who has a question?
While our guests are thinking, I think Kelsey, you were asking this earlier. I don't think we ever really got to the answer. You know, as to how do we the data points that we're tracking, what do we do with them? And we didn't really address the post interview discussion that the two interviewers have about the candidate. So we can.
What do you do with the data points you're saying in the interview?
Yeah, I'm just saying that we never really got to the answer to that, and that the one of the reasons for the two interviewers is that then after the candidate's gone, then we share, each of us share what we've been tracking during the interview, and often Amy will be tracking one thing, I'll be tracking something else, and that's really the benefit of having two people is that she'll see things I don't see, and and vice versa, and that really helps us get to a consensus about the candidate.
Yeah, and that's a great, thank you for circling back too, because that's a big piece of our process too, is that we both have to be in agreement. That if one person's a maybe, I don't know, I didn't really like what they said about that, or, they had more no's than they had yeses, then we're going to pass on that person. So it really is crucial that we have the two perspective and, get that different perspective. So thank you.
Yeah.
Bob is asking, where do you get most of your applicants?
Yeah, I can address that. So Bob, we, for us in particular, both of our restaurants are fairly large and we're pretty visible and well known in our community. We rely on word of mouth, I'd say, for probably 80% of applications. It's really, it's our current team members telling their friends and telling their relatives how great it is to work in a company. This is back, it's back to the retention, the great retention that we've achieved is encouraging other people to apply because they're hearing great things from our team members. And then, the other 20%, funny as it is, it's so simple. We have a little sign, in the grass outside the restaurants that says "Always hiring A+ team members," and I was surprised at how many people just said, I was driving by and I keep seeing that sign, and I decided it looked like a good place to apply. So that's that's a very low technology, decision, but that little sign outside the restaurant actually works very well.
Great, thank you, Derek.
Yeah.
Amy, how about this one? Does Nix use any technology for hiring, tracking, or training employees? Also, what are your thoughts in general with companies using third-party tools for hiring?
To the technology question, for our entry level, we don't currently, and I think we don't use any for the hiring, tracking, training. We do use a PI, predictive index that we use for manager hires, which is, part of a personality profiling, helps us categorize their tendencies and leadership behaviors. We use that after a second interview with someone, that we're interviewing for our leadership team. The way it's not driving our interview, it just is a data point that we can refer to that is either reinforcing some of our hunches or feelings, or negating them, contradicting them. So I've experienced some people that use that tool first as a weeding out process, and I think I think there's a lot that gets missed by using that solely or first. I've experienced firsthand, and someone I know in a larger company who let a great person almost not get hired because he didn't pass the screening, the computer profiling and screening, and someone pushed for a deeper interview, an added interview, and he got hired because there was a sense of a culture match that was not showing up that way. So, I feel like there's something to be said for the feeling in our gut. Our practice, our interview process just provides the training and the metrics to put what's in our gut and put it on paper, to actually give it some value. There's, and one thing I'll just add to that, kind of to go back to what you two were talking about, Kels and Derek, is, the post-interview, when we are talking about our experience of someone, a maybe of anyone, anyone who's experiencing I'm not sure, a maybe is always going to be a no. There's something in that maybe that's, that screams risk, and the risk is too great. So, a maybe for someone is always a no. And Javier, I hope I answered your question there. And Derek, would you add anything to that?
No, I think that was a pretty comprehensive answer.
Well,
Okay.
and one thing that's unique about our process too, and that's a subtlety, but a point, is that for each application that we get, there's a follow-up for our leadership team, for our entry level. Whether it's a yes or it's a no, there's some sort of reciprocation on our part. So if they're a no, Derek, what's the process there that we use?
So if they're a no, we have this. It's so easy being a pizzeria. We can give them a coupon for a free pizza. So we mail them a coupon, for a free pizza and say thank you for applying. With the idea just being that obviously every applicant is a potential guest as well, or most of them really have been guests, and so our job is to maintain our relationships with these with these guests, even though we can't hire them to be part of the team.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point, is that we're in this community, and just like any other hospitality industry, like dojos or like, these doggy daycares that may be with us on the webinar, these may be potential customers that you have down the line. So you don't want them to be offended, or that for you to not get back to them with their resume or with the application. So same thing with the resumes that we get for our leadership team. I send an email letting them know we got it, and then I do follow back, whether they get an interview or not. So same process there, and it's just really important, I think, to keep that communication open, because what's the downside of not hearing back is a negative experience about your company. Even if it is that they want a job and it didn't happen. So what is the name of the Inc. article you mentioned? I can send that out when I send out the recording, Javier. I'll include that Inc. article as well. I can pull up the name. It's 10 things employees want. I'm sure if you put that with Inc. in Google, it would pop up, but I can send it out too. We have time for maybe one more question. Are there any other questions? I can go ahead and put this here too if we need. Amy, while I'm typing this article for them, could you speak to the class a little bit, and where do we spend most of our time in that class, and how would it be a good use of their time to attend?
Sure, yeah. So the interviewing and hiring class it's 2 pretty full days, and we spend most of the first day really digging into the process and the body language piece. There's so much we can do with someone's body language and our own, so we really spend a great amount of time discussing and doing. So quickly, you know, by the end of the first day, I would say start to become aware of what your own tendencies are if you weren't already. And you get to do some smaller interactive activities that start practicing interviewing questions. And then on the second day, we roll even further into interviews. And now we actually do multiple interviews on the second day where you get to practice asking those open-ended questions. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of learning that comes from that. I think in just seeing a different answer that you can get from someone by asking an open-ended question versus a yes or no. Really asking a question that goes to the root of someone, speaks to more of the core versus the surface level yes or no question. Now I have 2 more questions I have to ask in order to get my answer type thing. So it's fun to really experience that and watch that open up. So it's very experiential as it needs to be. And I think there's a lot of hands-on learning, especially in the second day. So go through the screening process, the interview process, and then all of the question asking and body language tracking as well.
Everyone leaves with the whole process. I mean, the binder, the folders, the whole little kit that we have for our interviewing. So that's a little bit of a gift that we give by coming in, enrolling in our class. So
yeah.
We are available for questions after this. If you think of it, you know, that you didn't think of while we were on. Oh, one more. Thank you, Jessica. She highly recommends our interviewing class and Trust and Track. And she loves the interview kit. Jessica.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess.
Yeah, it's very nice. Thank you.
So office@nixpizzapub.com is the email address should you have any other questions. And hopefully this link is working too. If you could click there, that will take you to our Nix University website as well. So thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.